Select a landing heading to Afghanistan. Deploying.
Yaat E.
Be careful down there, boss.
You disappoint me. Have you forgotten my face?
Leave me be.
You won't respond to anyone else, so I figured it must be me you wanted to see. But now you won't even look at me.
Have I not suffered enough?
Not until you've eased my suffering first. To tell you the truth, old man, I'm in a bit of a bind. It's about your children. You know what I mean? The parasites. The ones that infect a man's throat, killing him if he speaks their language.
They must not be allowed to multiply.
You are allowed to live only in order to help me. But you don't want to, do you? So why not choose death instead? Because you want to protect the Diné and their land from me. That's your purpose, isn't it? Don't lose sight of that now. It's in your interest to cooperate. Because if you don't,
Madness.
the parasites can't detect your people's tongue. So I'll just have to resort to more heavy-handed means. I have the greatest respect for your people. I would rather avoid such a thing, but we don't always get our way. I was born a tiny mote in a mighty tempest, and until those winds abate, all I can choose is how to act when they blow me this way or that. Tell me, Code Talker, what happens to a man infected with a pair of your parasites? Can they be removed? Can the full-blown symptoms be prevented?
It is impossible to remove the parasites alone. They have too close an affinity with humans.
Then how do you stop the symptoms from developing?
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
All right. I was hoping for an answer now, but perhaps you just need a little more time. I'll be back soon. I've set up shop, not far from here. We'll be seeing
That's
a
the
lot
target.
of each other.
If you are close by, then It is almost complete.
We're in the final phases. All that's left is to see if I can actually disable a nuke, with the help of your metallic archaea. Once that's done, I won't have to...
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Suffering will end, as will your peoples. We're almost finished, Code Talker. Each in our own way.
My only regret will be not finishing you.
There's nothing stopping you. I'm only alive because you want me that way.
Ridiculous.
As you wish. My regret is this
You
misunderstanding
gonna extract him?
between us. You and I, our goal is the same. We should be working together. A symbiosis.
You do not know my mind. I simply want the Diné bloodline to endure.
Really now? You're just another moat in the storm. How you react to all the slings and arrows, that's what counts.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Monsters you are, children.
What I have done is forbidden. Forgive me, all of you.
The world should be left the way it is. You of all men should know that. Forgive me, but my schedule has changed. The time for grace and good manners has now run.
You gonna extract him?
Please. Torture will not work on me. Surely you know this.
Oh, I have no intention of getting rough with you. You haven't been beaten. Your hands aren't even tied. Just like me, you live in symbiosis with countless parasites. What wounds I might inflict, they'll patch right up. You might feel considerable pain, but I've no doubt you can withstand it.
List updated.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Extraction.
I have a
arrived
soldier
at
standing
Mother Base.
outside. Nothing special about him, except that he always obeys. I have given him one instruction. Whenever I ring this bell, he passes on a message for me. That message is simply, go.
What is this?
After that, though, it gets complicated. The message will arrive at a room, a little bigger than this one, nothing special. Some of your people are in this room, surrounded by my men.
Enough of this.
They pick them at random. No regard for age, gender. In that, I suppose, they're different from you. Not as discriminating. They tied them up, one by one, blindfolded them. We had to maintain order, you understand?
You bastard.
Go. When they hear that, my men will pick one of your people and infect them with a parasite. Your parasite.
It won't work on my people.
True. The vocal cord parasite doesn't respond to your language. But what about English?
An English strain. It exists.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base. Please select a mission. Please select a landing zone heading to Central Africa.
gave Ralph, that kid who died in the accident, a burial at sea.
Marker placed.
The man in charge of that facility has been severely punished. But ever since, the kids have been acting strange. It's obvious they've lost their trust in adults. I was getting reports of them ignoring the staff, or getting insolent, and even violent. And a few days later, several of the kids did a disappearing act. They snuck into choppers and shipping containers and got off base. Why? Your guess is as good as mine. These kids were born in a war zone and forced to grow up as war fighters. If they're left alone, war is how they'll die. But I thought we showed them there are other reasons to live. I never liked having children on Mother Base. But the thought of them going back to the battlefield and picking up their old lifestyle is something I can't stomach. It makes me think of Chico, 9 years ago. We have to get those kids
Boss,
back.
you need to find those kids who escaped. Fighting's still the only way of life they know. If we don't bring them back, they'll just end up getting killed. He's coming too. Roger that.
Side ops list updated.
Okay, subject is in.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base. Please select a landing zone. Deploying.
Snake, you remember the White Mamba? Of course, he's been going by Eli since we brought him on base. He was the leader of the child soldier unit we took out of that village and into our protection. Well, according to the kids you brought back here, all the escapees were especially close to Eli. There's reason to suspect he's behind all 6 escapes. We've already detained him. I'll be questioning him shortly.
Wait. You'll be?
Ocelot.
You're incapable of taking an impartial stance with those kids. Question them all you want. It'll get you nowhere.
Detected.
Ocelot,
System updated.
you get too many kicks from your art of interrogation.
It's not
Boss, you need to find those kids who escaped.
about quick.
Fighting's still the only way of life they know. If we don't bring them back, they'll just end up getting killed.
It's the best way to keep both questioner and subject safe. The risks only increase the more an interrogation drags on. At that point, it causes as much pain to the inflictor as the inflicted.
Like I said, too many kicks.
What I'm trying to tell you is we need quick results. Otherwise, it'll be too little, too late.
I know that.
And besides, I know the subject. I won't go overboard with a kid.
Forget it. You're not needed. Snake, we'll want to question the other kids too. Be sure to bring them all back.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
CPS is het weer. Iets je moeite waard om uit te checken. Stuur het bevel. Over. CPS begrijpt. De scherpsecurity en weer zwakker. Uit.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Analysis complete. Development complete.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Complete. Development complete. Development complete. Clouds approaching. Development complete.
aboard. Leave the rest to us.
Сибирь, Зулуен. Идти мой товар Майдан. Зулуен, was verkehrt? Kommen, Zuluyen! Оценка ситуации. Alle Ingenieure, stand by.
Boss, about the kids. It appears there's a movement among them to organize against us. I can think of only one person who'd be behind that.
Extraction arrived.
I'll continue to look into it.
Sun will rise momentarily.
Сибирь.
Please select a landing zone. Heading to Afghanistan. Deploying.
about the escaped children. Eli confessed. The way he tells it, they wanted to go back to the battlefield. Don't rob them of their freedom, he said. If you bring them all back, there will be consequences. Next to be asking for our surrender.
Consequences? What consequences?
No idea. That's all I have for now.
You're too attached to those kids. Stop protecting Eli.
Listen to yourself.
Let me question him, and we'll get some real answers.
Not necessary. I'll report as and when.
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
I have no doubt Skullface's plan is almost complete. At that point, I will no longer be of use to him. I must leave behind this record at least. A record of how the ancient vocal cord parasites became these abominable ethnic cleansing parasites. I believe he has two purposes for the ethnic cleansing parasites. The first, as their name suggests, is ethnic cleansing. This conflict between East and West that envelops the world will not last much longer. Once the Cold War ends, and the weight of America and the Soviet Union is lifted away, the ethnic conflicts they kept suppressed will all rise to the surface. It is not difficult to imagine that the radical sides will begin cleansing their adversaries. But what if an ethnic cleansing parasite matching the language of the aggressors were to be unleashed? The aggressors would be washed off the earth. At the very least, the idea that retaliation could eradicate your people would prove a powerful deterrent. The second purpose is the Englishization of the world. To cipher the organization, this is probably their main use. Man thinks in words, or rather, words are man's very means of thinking.
Boss, you need to find those kids who escaped. Fighting's still the only way of life they know. If we don't bring them back, they'll just end up getting killed.
Nishone means beautiful in Navajo. But the image that comes to mind when we say Nishone differs from the Blagana's beautiful. An azure sky, a rolling landscape, lush greenery. The meaning we place in Nishone has its roots in Dene culture. If we lose the word Nishone, the images of our beautiful homeland would be washed away into oblivion along with it, just as Orwell indicated years ago. Cipher, being based in America, is pushing Englishization for this very reason. Suppose all 5 billion people on this planet come to read, speak, and think in English. Their wills could also be streamlined under English. Cipher's control would be all the easier. Economic governance would progress in leaps and bounds. The ethnic cleansing parasites would be a great aid in accomplishing this goal. There is no need to destroy every language besides. All they need to do is weaken other dominant languages competing with it. Russian, Chinese, Arabic. If people know they risk their lives speaking such languages, they will flock to the lingua franca that is English. Cipher need not even focus attention on smaller languages. After all, they are already being eaten away by English. Business, education, film, commodities. English has permeated every area of global society. I can see this when I look at young Dene. Some of them have already lost their grasp of the Navajo language. It is said that over 2,000 languages of the world are facing extinction.
this very moment, cultural concepts and forms of expression are disappearing forever. The spread of electronic networks gives greater meaning to Englishization. Networks have no national borders. By basing them on a single language, they can penetrate deeper into and between people. That basic point of unity provides the ideal
Okay, subject is in.
who aims to control people.
Please select a landing zone. Deploying.
Boss, we found weapons in the children's section of the living quarters. As you know, weapons are strictly off limits. We've got some rule breakers. The weapons we found were handmade. Blades ground out of knives and forks, a couple of bow guns built out of scrap, and explosives made using detergents. And get this, the explosives were tightly packed with nails. The kids put the blame on, you guessed it, Eli. I guess that's what he meant by consequences.
I questioned him about it. This time he claimed they wanted
Boss, you need to find those kids who escaped.
to send us to the battle.
Fighting's still the only way of life they know. If we don't bring them back, they'll just end up getting killed.
Question.
Protected.
What Eli's doing is issuing a threat. Comply with my demands or I'll respond with force. But it'll be war at this rate. Forks and soap aren't gonna kill us, but some of them will end up dead. Is that what you want? Now, I hate to say it, but they want to be on the battlefield. It's time you gave up this fantasy.
Eli, he said they'd rise up against us if we bring the last kid back.
There, you see? Ignore his demands. Don't let him return to quarters. That attitude is contagious. We lose control over them for good.
For the time being, we've confiscated those handmade weapons. We're bumping up security and the number of psychiatric counselors. As for Eli,
He needs some very special care.
you mean solitary?
Well, we can't leave him in contact with the other kids. If you won't do it, I will. Boss, keep working on extracting those kids.
Капец, СВ-10. Тут что-то странное. Жду указаний. Прием. Это КП. Понял. Усилить безопасность. Повышенная боевая готовность. Конец связи.
Subject is in.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base. Please select a mission. Unit dispatched. Unit dispatched. Unit dispatched. Unit dispatched. Please select a landing zone. Deploying. Sun will set shortly. The map has been updated.
The kids you brought back to base have laid out the situation. They all escaped to each of their home villages, or were trying to get home and lost their way. Not that homesickness is gonna explain everything we've seen.
Each of their home villages. They were trying to raise troops for the rebellion.
You really think these kids have an armed uprising in them?
You read the report of the security team member who had a rock thrown at him. There'll be a riot if we don't do something. And Miller, this is because you didn't act fast enough.
Fine. I'll admit you were right this time.
Seal off the kids' quarters from outside contact before it's too late.
All right.
Eli said his rebellion would start when the last kid is brought back, right? You better be ready to meet him head on if it really happens.
Yeah.
You should have left it to me in the first place.
Boss, they're just kids. We have a responsibility to see that those kids make it. It's not about feeling protective or the pros and cons. I hate kids. That's exactly what I heard from the people who raised me. People who abandoned me, more like. That's the spark that kept me going, you know? I wanted to show those adults what I was made of. Wanted to get back at them one day. But before I knew it, I was all grown up. Never saw it coming.
Boss, you need to find those kids who escaped. Fighting's still the only way of life they know. If we don't bring them back, they'll just end up getting killed.
You had been different. I could have grown up better. Yeah, that's it, all right. I wanted to use those kids to test that theory. That's all this was. From their point of view, I'm no different from the assholes who gave me a hard time. When this is all blown over, I'll talk it out with them. If that's still possible. Boss, there are still kids out there. Bring them back safe.
Boss, it's me. Eli's revealed what he wants. He wants to speak with you. With Big Boss. He just said, bring my father here. Eli's too smart for his own good. No way to tell what he's thinking. All we know for sure is his men are important to him. That means we can use the escaped kids as leverage in any negotiation. Once you've brought the last one back, I'll interrogate him. If the kids do rise up, we'll meet them full force. End of story. I didn't want things to turn out like this. We could have prevented it, but it's too late now. If Eli means to take this all the way, he's gonna force us to do the same. Boss, go get that last kid.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Please sell the supplies requested. Supply drop complete.
The ethnic cleansing parasites attempt to rob man of his words. Such irony. It was the vocal cord parasites that gave words to him in the first place. Ancient man had no language, unable to produce complex sounds due to the structure of the throat. He could communicate only through simple vocalizations and gestures. Then the vocal cord parasites infected his larynx. Man's transition to walking upright did not gift him solely with intelligence, but also with his voice. At the time, the vocal cord parasites never harmed man. They merely took a small measure of nourishment. In fact, you could call it a symbiotic relationship. Some animal species use particular vocalization patterns to attract a female and reproduce. Songbirds, certain insects, and also the vocal cord parasites. The difference is that the parasites themselves did not produce sounds. Rather, they had their hosts, man, do it for them. Once secure on the human host vocal cords, a male vocal cord parasite caused the host to produce a certain sound pattern, something like a warble of a bird. Meanwhile, females parasitizing on the host pharynx.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Upon hearing the sound pattern of an attractive mate, they would manipulate their hosts into making contact with the person
You gonna extract him?
The female traveled through his host's saliva to the other host's vocal cords, where the male was waiting and the pair copulated. We can only imagine how the female manipulated his host, but it was probably through smell. Smells traveled directly to the limbic system via the olfactory cilia in the nasal cavity. Volatile compounds released by the female would stimulate the limbic system, which controls instincts, making the host feel amorous. This kind of sexual selection.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Between the male parasites. Males that had their hosts produce sounds perceived by females as more attractive succeeded in copulating and producing.
Subject on board. Whole lot of trouble they put us through. Making me worry like that.
The mannequins dance. The fireflies' luminescence pattern. Even with courtship behaviors that are not advantageous to survival, those individuals that excel in them produce offspring, and it escalates with each generation. The same was true of the vocal cord parasites. Courtship vocalization rhythms and intonations became more sophisticated, and in order for man to produce such sounds, they had to alter his vocal organs. By lowering the position of the larynx and developing resonating chambers, they enabled more complex pronunciations. But that was not all. The vocal cord parasites activated a transcription factor that would later control man's language ability. A protein that, due to its appearance, is called forkhead box protein P2, or FOX-P2. Activating this transcription factor led to the development of brain function capable of creating sophisticated frequency changes. This was the pinnacle of the vocal cord parasite's prosperity. However, this sophisticated pronunciation control was too useful for man to ignore.
Approaching.
Once human sexual activity ceased to be only seasonal, and having lost pigment-based sexual characteristics, distinctive vocalizations became the most effective means for humans to attract mates as well. Combined with logic pathways hardwired into the brain, or universal grammar, it was not long before advanced communication was possible. This was the birth of language. Luckily for man, it was around this time that a particular retrovirus was circulating. While not lethal, it infected not only man, but the vocal cord parasites as well. It is presumed that this virus removed part of the parasite's DNA and reverse transcribed it into man's reproductive cells. It was a vector. Among the genes it transcribed were the ones responsible for the production of language. The vocal cord parasite's vocalization genes were written into the human genome. The parasites were no longer of any use to man now. Man could use his voice as he pleased, when he pleased, hindering the parasite's courtship vocalizations. Having lost their opportunity...
Boss, I have a quick report for you here. We've discovered a radiation leak in the laboratory on the quarantine platform. It's coming from testing equipment we installed the other day. Members of the medical team have been conducting research there, but we'll evacuate them all from the research block to the containment block next to it. Emmerich.
There's no need to worry. No radioactive material is leaked, so the contamination won't spread. We just need to seal off the testing equipment.
I've dispatched the security team to get the researchers out. I'll keep you updated.
Which is exactly why these...
Extraction arrived at Mother Base.
Boss, I have a quick report for you here. We've discovered a radiation leak in the laboratory on the quarantine platform. It's coming from testing equipment we installed the other day. Members of the medical team have been conducting research there, but we'll evacuate them all from the research block to the containment block next to it. Emmerich.
There's no need to worry. No radioactive material is leaked, so the contamination won't spread. We just need to seal off the testing equipment.
I've dispatched the security team to get the researchers out. I'll keep you updated.
Mission accepted. Deploying.
Boss, retrieve the film canister our informant hid in Spoogmay Keep before he died. It contains vital information on Skullface's plan. For now, our only clue is the garbled photograph the informant tried to send us before the end. We're working on analyzing the data, but there's no time to wait. A KGB Spetsnaz squad is after the target as well. Boss, go to Spoogmay Keep and use the VI to lead you to where the film canister is hidden. It is paramount you retrieve the target before the enemy does.
Marker placed. Marker placed.
Be careful down there, boss.
Map has been updated. You have arrived at your destination.
goes back approximately...
There's some high ground there. Just what you need for recon.
At that time, they were not even parasites, but predatory autotrophs. They are believed to have been the common ancestor to the Pentastomida and the Cyclops genus of copepods. However, Earth's environment underwent a violent change at the end of the Permian period. The cause is unclear, but evidence suggests that over 90% of the Earth's organisms at that time died out. The most pronounced threat to the proto-parasites was the severe reduction in oxygen concentration. The result was cladogenesis, a splitting that gave birth to a new strain that could parasitize other organisms' respiratory apparatus. This survival tactic helped lower their oxygen consumption, and inhabiting the throat kept them securely in contact with inhaled air. The best survivors were those that parasitized the reptiles that flourished at the time. Entering the Triassic period, the reptiles evolved into dinosaurs, and the proto-parasites shared in their success. Dinosaurs developed respiratory organs called air sacs to adapt to the low oxygen environment. These in particular helped the proto-parasites thrive. But another trial awaited them. The end of the Triassic period saw another drastic change in the Earth's environment. For most parasites, the male and female take the same host. Many are, in fact, hermaphrodites. Originally, the vocal cord parasites were as well. But for any strain to ride out a severe environmental change, it must secure a steady pool of genetic diversity. Another split. Now the newest strain procreated with mates found in other hosts. And in order to increase its encounters with those mates, the new strain utilized the voice of its host. They came to inhabit the host's vocal cords. This truly was the birth of the vocal cord parasite. The parasites developed the host's pharynx to form resonating chambers and used them to produce sophisticated mating calls. The relatively upright posture of the dinosaurs was important in this, because the crooked L-shaped pharynx was more suited to the development of resonating chambers. These developments ushered in a time of great prosperity for the parasites. But for the third time, the parasites had a major hurdle to overcome. The meteorite impact at the end of the Cretaceous period, which spelled the end of the dinosaurs. With their hosts extinct, the vocal cord parasites had no option but to find a new habitat. Birds. As genetic successors to the dinosaurs, with functioning air sac apparatus already in place, birds were the perfect choice. But the parasites could not survive.
You gotta extract him.
At high altitudes with thinner air. So they parasitized ground-dwelling birds and altered their respiratory system for the sake of reproduction. They gave the birds the means to produce sophisticated sounds.
Boss, we fully decrypted the VI data. Now the target's hiding place should be clear as day. Check your iDroid.
Activation of Fox P2 in songbirds as well as humans. The Cenozoic era began with a rise in oxygen concentration, which helped mammals to evolve and increase in size. The parasites then shifted to humans as a more effective host. Humans' bipedal upright walking meant that our throats could support larger resonating chambers. At first, vocal cord parasites entered humans using birds as their intermediate host. But eventually they changed to conducting their entire life cycle within human hosts. What happened next is as I have already described. People took the vocalizing prowess given them by the parasites and made it language. And once the parasites could no longer use it as their mating call, They died out.
Development complete.
Or in other words, the parasites overcame all evolutionary hurdles except humanity. Skullface shared his opinion on this matter. He said the Ethnic Cleansers Project was sure to succeed. After all, the parasites had a grudge against us humans. To think we awoke them after such a long slumber, just so they could sate their thirst for vengeance. It is terrible, unforgivable, and yet, it is what I have done. I learned of the vocal cord parasite's existence in literature belonging to the Foundation. It was little more than a theory. The question was, why does only Homo sapiens among all primates have highly developed language? Human versus everything else. The missing link between these was the mystery that gave rise to this theory. I was fascinated by the idea of their existence.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Creation myth, the Neo-Dene, who first inhabited the world, were insect-like creatures. I came to imagine that those
You gonna extract him?
could be humans living in symbiosis with the vocal cord parasites. But I had not the faintest idea of how I could resurrect them. That is when Skullface came to me. What he offered me was not just assistance with my metallic archaea research. He told me the vocal cord parasites really existed. And not only did they exist, they had already been brought back to life in the modern age. An ancient human cadaver, host to the parasites of the time. Cypher excavated such a cadaver from a permafrost region and isolated the DNA coding of the vocal cord parasites. Naturally, they were long dead and could not be brought back, but there was an alternate vessel they could use. A relative species of the Pentastomida discovered in China. It had adapted to live in the nasal cavity of animal hosts, but its genetic sequence showed signs of common ancestry with the vocal cord parasites. Ontogenesis, the path of an organism to maturity, is like a roadmap of the phylogenetic evolution of the entire strain. Cypher used this to effect a reverse evolution of the modern parasite and resurrect the vocal cord parasites. They interposed a developmental mechanism to the ontogenetic stage analogous to when the relative species first appeared, the point at which it split from the vocal cord parasites, forcing its evolution down the other path, the vocal cord parasite path. The larvae is produced by the vocal cord parasites, reborn. I do not know in detail how Cypher accomplished this, but clearly they have access to a high-level genetic.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Skullface said it was the work of a genius woman scientist, and that the relative species in question was first discovered by a group once called the Philosophers. I was tasked with modifying the resurrected parasites. He charged me with two demands. First, to add lethality to these organisms that had once lived in peace with man, by unleashing the larvae's latent desire to consume nutrients from the host's lung tissue, making them eat and eat until the lungs were destroyed. Second, to have both male and female inhabit the same host and copulate then and there, only when exposed to specific pronunciations continuously over an extended time. What he would do to the Dene if I failed. I had no choice. Originally, the ultimate objective of the ethnic cleansing parasite project was the identification of not only languages, but of actual cultures. Language is deeply connected to ethnicity, but many languages are employed by multiple ethnic groups, and confrontation between those ethnic groups is by no means rare. If the cleanser parasites were to be a
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
they had to distinguish between groups using means other than pure language. The original plan called for this to be achieved by differences in the transmission vector. Each ethnic group has different lifestyle customs and eating habits. For instance, parasites living in shallow water.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Could be used to target rice farming groups, or parasites using cows as their intermediate host would be ineffective against cultures that abstain.
You gotta extract him.
But that is a lofty goal indeed. The current parasites mainly rely on droplet transmission. It would take extensive time to alter the transmission route. I eventually learned that the Ethnic Cleansers project had been shut down. It was Skullface who put it back into operation. But despite that, he told me to forget about the transmission route and just focus on language identification. I do not know why. I understand that the Chinese philosophers who discovered the relative species of parasite originally planned to develop a phonogrammic Alexia parasite. The left temporal parietal region is home to the part of the brain that identifies the phonetic symbols of the English language. They wished to create a strain that would parasitize that region and suppress its literacy functions. The brain area responsible for identifying the logographs of Chinese, meanwhile, is in the left middle frontal gyrus, meaning that even if native speakers of Chinese were infected with the parasite, the literacy would be unaffected. Old and new, east and west, there is no limit to the delusions of those in power. But this delusion threatens to become a reality. I have to do something to stop this.
You've completed your objective. Now get out of the hot zone.
Mission info has been updated. Marker placed. Extraction arrived at Mother Base.
That's it. You've made it out of the hot zone. No sign of the enemy. Mission complete, boss. All right. Mission complete, boss.
Side ops list updated.
Boss, I've updated the mission list.
Mission list
We received a
updated.
new... Boss, I've updated the mission list. We received a new job offer. The details are on your iDroid.
Please select a mission.